Hi everyone, welcome to my channel, Maths Made Easy with Terry in 10 minutes. We're going to talk about the conjugate law, okay? That's law number 5. We want to understand the concept of conjugate. So like I said earlier, when we talk about conjugate, we're talking about these are surds or are complementary surds with an opposite sign. So let me just write it down here, so that in case you're writing, so you can take note of what I just said. So a conjugate surd are complementary surds. Okay. Complementary surds. But in this case, they have an opposite sign. Is that okay? So when we talk about conjugate, so for example, we have A plus C root D. The conjugate will be A minus what? Root D. Is that okay? So if you have root A plus root B, the conjugate will be root A minus root B. So it's exactly the same thing, but the source is going to be different. Sorry, the sign is going to be different. So let's assume we have something like this. The conjugate is going to be A root B plus C root D. So they're exactly the same thing, but the signs are different, okay? And in the previous video, I gave you the rules for conjugate, where I told you that for each of them, no matter what happens, it gives you the same value, usually in those cases, but without the sort. So it's just like you're multiplying algebra, but without the sorts. Is that okay? So let's start with one first. All right. So maybe to make it clearer. So let's say we have root A plus root B. Okay. Multiplying by the conjugate is going to give you root A minus root B. Okay. And when you do that now, it's going to be same thing. So like I said, when you multiply a surd by its conjugate, the root or the square root disappears. So it's very important to know. So let me just write it there. So when you multiply, okay, when you multiply a surd, all right, by its conjugate, the square root sign, square root sign. So when we talk about the square root sign, I mean the square root sign disappears, okay? So when you're done and you've solved the question with a conjugate, the square root sign is not going to be there again. So it's very important that you take note of that. So if, for instance, we have this and you open the bracket, it's going to be, it follows all the basic rules of algebra, like we said. So if you follow the bracket for this, you're going to have root A times root A, okay? Root A times root A, it will give you A. Root A times minus root B will give you minus root AB. Are you seeing it? Then when you also try it with others, root B times root A is going to give you root AB, and plus root B times minus root B will give you minus B. Minus root AB plus root AB will cancel out, and you'll be left with what? A minus B. So you can see after you multiply this kind of conjugate, the result had no surd in it. Is that okay? So for instance, let's say we had root 3 plus root 5. Now multiplying by the conjugate, root 3 minus root 5, okay? Root 3 times root 3 will give you 3. Root 3 times minus root 5 will give you minus root 15. Root 5 times root 3 will give you plus root 15. And root 5 times minus root 5 will give you minus 5. So this will cancel this out, and you'll be having 3 minus 5, and that will give you minus what? 2 as an answer. Is that okay? Now, the other one I talked about when you have root A plus B. Is that okay? I talked about root A plus B. Now, multiplying by the conjugate is going to give you root A minus B. Are you seeing the difference? So it's going to be the same thing, but you'll notice that when we solve this as well, you will see that the answer is not going to have surds as well. So the essence of why we usually multiply by the conjugate, usually, I'll talk about that when we talk about rationalizing, is to get rid of the square root sign. So when you multiply root a times root a, is going to give you a. Root a times minus b will give you minus b root a. B times root a will give you plus b root a, plus b times minus b will give you minus b squared. Minus b root a plus b root a will cancel out, and you'll be left with a minus what? B squared. So you can see, after multiplying conjugates, there are no what? Squares there. Square root, sorry. So if you look at this one, so let's say we have square root of 3 plus 5, okay? Now, multiply by the conjugate will be square root of 3 minus what? 5. Now, root 3 times root 3 is going to give us what? 3. Root 3 times minus 5, root 3 times minus 5 will give you minus 5 root 3. 5 times root 3 will give you plus 5 root 3. Plus 5 times minus 5 will give you minus what? 25. Minus 5 root 3 will cancel plus 5 root 3, and that will give you 3 minus 25, and that will give you what? Minus 22. That's the answer. Is that okay? So that is it, multiplying by conjugate, all right? So you can try different ones. So no matter how the conjugate looks like, it's going to give you the same thing. So let's say we have roots, put this in another way and get this out. So let's say we have a root b plus c root d. What will be the conjugate? It will be what? A root b minus c root d. Are you seeing it? So that is it. So the same thing, we're going to multiply. So root ab, so we have a root b multiplied by a root b. So a times a will give you a squared. B root b times root b will give us what? B. So this is going to give us a squared b. The same thing, we're going to have a root b multiplied by minus. So this is minus now. Minus c root d. So we have a root b multiplied by c root d. A times c is going to give us ac. B times root b times root d is going to give us root bd. So it's going to give us ac root what? bd. Okay. Now the same thing, we're going to repeat it as well. C root d times a root b. So we have c root d times a root b. So a times c will give us ac. Are you seeing it? So we have plus here. And we have b times d is going to give us root what? bd. So we're going to have ac root bd. Then the last one, we're having plus times minus. That will give us minus. So we're having c root d multiplied by c root d. C times c will give us c squared. Root d times root d will give us d. So it's going to give us c squared d. Is that okay? It's going to give us c squared d. And that will be the answer for that. So after this step, the next thing we have to do is that we have to then what? Simplify. So minus ac b root d and this two will cancel out. So you now have a squared b minus c squared d. So you can also see in this scenario as well, the surds as well also disappears. So let's assume we have this. So we have 3 root 5 plus 4 root, let's say root 2, okay, to make it easy. Then the conjugate is going to be 3 root 5 minus 4 root 2. The same thing, we're going to go. So the first thing is that we have 3 root 5 multiplied by 3 root 5. So the same thing, we have 3 times 3 is 9. Root 5 times root 5 is going to give us 5. So that means it's going to give us 5. So that means it will be 9 times 5. So that will be 9 times 5, and that will give us 45. So that means here is what? 45. The next one will be minus, because we have a minus. Plus times minus will give us minus. 3 times 4. So we're going to have 3 root 5 multiplied by 4 root 2, or let's say minus 4 root 2. 3 times minus 4 will give us minus 12. And 5 times 2 will give us 10. So we're going to have minus 12 root 10. The next one, we're going to have 4 root 2 multiplied by 3 root 5. 4 times 3 will give us 12. 2 times 5 will give us what? 10. And that will give us plus 12 root 10. Okay? And the last one, we're going to have 4 root 2 multiplied by minus 4 root 2. So 4 times minus 4 will give us minus 16. Root 2 times root 2 will give us 2. So minus 16 times 2 will give us minus 32. So the answer here is going to be minus what? 32. Okay? So it's very important that you revise the product division rule, the previous rules, so that you can understand the rules as we keep going forward. All right? So now we collect like terms. So if you notice minus 12 root 10 plus 12 root 10, these, we cancel these out, okay? And you now have 45 minus 32, and that will give us what? 13. So the answer we have for that, it will be what? 13. And that is that for conjugate what? Conjugate rule. So for conjugate, basically, when you multiply a conjugate, the source what? Disappears. So you see, after we multiply in each scenarios, the answer we get, there are no surds there. All right, so this is very important because when we get to rationalizing the denominator, we're going to be using the conjugates to multiply. And like I said, a conjugate source are complementary source with an opposite what? Sign. All right, so here the sign is what? Opposite. All right. Thank you very much, and I'm going to see you in the next video, and we're going to talk about rationalizing a denominator. And please don't forget to subscribe and put on the notification bell, so when we post new videos, you will see new, you'll be the first to know about the new videos. Thank you very much. See you soon in the next video.